Hey you? Yeah, you, the one pretending you're not tired, while your shoulders quietly file complaints against you in the background. Welcome back. Tonight, you're not here to grind, achieve, optimize, or be your best self. Tonight, you're here to soften, to loosen the tight little knots in your chest that you've been calling normal. To let your thoughts stop sprinting in circles like anxious dogs chasing their own tails. You're standing at the edge of Angkor's rice fields, and it's night, real night, not neon city night. The moon hangs above you like a pale coin held up to the sky for inspection, and the paddies below mirror it so cleanly that you can't tell whether you're looking down into water or up into another world. The rice shoots rise in neat rows, delicate green lines drawn across black glass. Somewhere far off, palm trees lean into the darkness like they're listening for gossip. And beyond them, the temple silhouettes sit low and steady on the horizon, ancient shapes that don't need to announce themselves, because they've already survived everything. Lanterns start appearing in the distance. Not a sudden burst, not a dramatic reveal, more like the night is exhaling warm dots of light, one at a time. A small glow flares near a footpath. Another floats above a doorway. A cluster gathers along a dike where people move quietly, as if they're handling something fragile. The light is soft, amber, human. It's the opposite of a phone screen. It doesn't demand your attention, it invites it. You walk forward, and the ground changes under your feet. The road's dusty edge gives way to packed earth, then to the narrow raised paths that divide each flooded plot. Your shoes sink just a little, enough to remind you this place is alive and wet and honest about it. The air smells like water plants, warm mud, and distant smoke, someone cooking somewhere. Above all that is a faint sweetness, like crushed grass left to dry in moonlight. The quiet here isn't empty. It's layered. Frogs pulse their calls from hidden corners like they're testing microphones. Cicadas buzz in steady, soft sheets of sound. Every so often, you hear the small slap of water disturbed by something unseen. It could be a fish. It could be a drifting leaf. It could be the night itself adjusting its posture. You follow the lanterns. You don't even decide to. Your body just leans toward warmth the way a cold hand leans toward a mug. The path narrows, and your attention narrows with it. You begin to notice tiny things you would normally bulldoze past. The way moonlight catches on the ripples left by a breeze, the way rice stalks bow slightly, the way your own breath sounds louder when the world is this calm. A few figures move along the dike ahead. Their silhouettes at first, dark shapes against lantern glow, then slowly. As you get closer, you can see their baskets, their rolled sleeves, their unhurried pace. Nobody rushes. Nobody performs urgency like it's a virtue. It's almost unsettling, this lack of panic. Your brain tries to suggest a checklist. Your brain is politely ignored. The locals notice you without turning it into a production. You catch the subtle angle of a head, the calm skin of a face, the easy acceptance of one more person on a path. Their presence feels like a hand on your back, not pushing, not pulling, just steadying you. They move as if they've always known the night belongs to everyone who can walk quietly enough to deserve it. You step onto a slightly wider stretch where the rice fields open like a dark lake broken into squares. In the far distance, you can make out the faint outline of Angkor Wat's towers, jagged and elegant, rising above the tree line like they're made of shadow and memory. The temple is not lit up like a tourist postcard. It's simply there. Old. Patient. Watching the moon, watching you, watching the rice fields do what they've done for countless nights before you ever existed. You realize something gently terrifying. Your problems don't look impressive here. They don't vanish. They just shrink. They become small objects you can carry instead of entire rooms you have to live inside. Even your exhaustion, your heavy, soaked in the bones exhaustion, feels acknowledged rather than judged. The night doesn't ask you why you're tired. It just offers you a place to be tired safely. You keep walking until you reach a cluster of lanterns near a small wooden platform set by the water's edge. Someone has placed a few woven mats there, and a low table holds a clay pot that releases a lazy ribbon of steam into the air. You smell something herbal, lemongrass, maybe, or ginger. The scent makes your eyelids want to lower, just a fraction. Your body recognizes comfort faster than your pride does. You crouch, because that's what everyone else seems to do here. You fold yourself down into the night like you're finally agreeing to take up less space. The rice fields reflect the lanterns in little trembling duplicates. Above you, the moon watches without opinion. It's a very rare thing, to be observed by something ancient that has no interest in your performance. Somewhere behind you, a small gong tone echoes faintly, soft, distant, not dramatic. It rolls through the air and dissolves, like a bell rung underwater. You feel it more than you hear it, and you realize, with a quiet snort of honesty, that you probably won't survive this in the way you usually survive things, by staying tense, staying guarded, staying in control. This night doesn't reward control. It rewards surrender. The gentle kind. The safe kind. Your gaze drifts across the patties again. Lanterns sway slightly, as if the darkness is breathing around them. The temple silhouettes remain steady, like anchors dropped into time. The frogs continue their soft chorus. And in the middle of all that, you finally notice the simplest fact: you are here. Right now. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Not in that imaginary argument you keep replaying. Here. Your shoulders lower by a millimeter. Your jaw unclenches by a fraction. And that's enough. That's the first crack in the wall. You begin to stand again, letting your feet find the narrow path, letting your body remember how to move slowly without apologizing. The lanterns ahead glow like breadcrumbs, leading you deeper into the night where people gather, where customs unfold, where the rice fields and temples and moonlight will keep teaching you the old skill you've forgotten: how to rest without earning it. You follow the lantern breadcrumbs until the quiet of the patties starts to blur at the edges, replaced by something warmer and more human: soft footfalls, low laughter that doesn't spike into noise, the gentle clink of metal, the hush of fabric brushing fabric. The night doesn't get louder, exactly. It just becomes inhabited. A narrow lane opens ahead, and it's lined with lanterns in a way that feels almost unfair to anyone who has ever tried to set the mood with one sad desk lamp. These lanterns aren't trying to impress you. They're just doing their job, the way moonlight does its job, the way rice does its job, quietly, reliably, without asking for applause. Some hang from wooden beams and low eaves. Some sit on tables in little clusters, glowing like a gathered family. A few swing slightly in the breeze, their light wobbling over the ground so it looks like the lane itself is breathing. The market isn't enormous. It doesn't need to be. It's a thread of life stitched through the village, a place where people trade, eat, fix, make, and linger, where the day's work loosens its grip without fully letting go. You step into it the way you step into warm water, cautiously at first, then with a small surrender when you realize nobody's here to judge you for existing. Lantern making happens right at the front, as if the village has decided the best welcome is to show you how they make light out of thin materials and patient hands. You watch bamboo strips get bent into arcs, then coaxed into neat frames, the way a careful person folds a map they actually plan to use again. Paper, thin and slightly textured, slides over those frames and gets smooth with palms that have done this 1,000 times. The glue smells faintly sweet and starchy. A brush flicks, a seam seals, and suddenly there's a shape that will hold a glow and make the dark feel friendly. Some lanterns are simple rounds. Others bloom into lotus-like forms. A few have cutouts, tiny patterns that will scatter light into lace shadows on the ground. You notice how the makers never rush. Even when the lane is busy, their rhythm stays calm, as if the most important part of the work is not the lantern at all, but the steadiness required to complete it. Your brain, still wearing its usual suit of armor, tries to label things. Tourist attraction, commerce, craft, cultural product. But the labels slide off the moment you notice the small domestic details. A child half asleep on a bench near a stack of frames. An older person carefully trimming paper edges with the focus of someone arranging flowers. A bowl of water beside the work area for rinsing brushes. The easy way hands pass tools without making a ceremony of it. This isn't performance. This is livelihood. This is routine made beautiful because it's done with care. You drift deeper into the lane, and the scent of food finds you before you find the stalls. Smoke curls upward in lazy ribbons. Something sizzles. Something sweet warms in a pot. There's a smell that lands in your chest and loosens it. Grilled fish maybe, or roasted banana, or rice cakes caramelizing at the edges. Your stomach, which has been running on stress and stubbornness, suddenly remembers it's a stomach and not a storage unit for anxiety. On one side, sacks of rice sit stacked like soft mountains, the woven plastic catching lantern light in faint shimmer. A vendor's hands scoop rice into smaller bags with practiced precision, grains sliding like pale beads. You watch a scale, simple, honest metal, dip and balance. The weights are worn smooth from years of being touched. There's something soothing about seeing food measured with such calm certainty. No frantic spreadsheets. No doom scrolling. Just the quiet logic of grain and weight and need. You lean closer, and the rice smells faintly nutty, like warm earth after sun. Different sacks hold different varieties. Long grains, shorter grains, slightly translucent grains that catch light like tiny moons. You don't need to know every name to understand the message. This is what keeps people standing. This is what turns mud and water and time into dinner. You think briefly about how much of your life is spent pretending you don't rely on anything. The rice doesn't pretend. The rice is unapologetically necessary. Someone nearby taps a scoop against the rim of a container, soft, rhythmic. Another person ties off a bag with a strip of twine. The lane hums with small sounds that feel like lullabies made of chores. Even your breathing starts to match the pace of it, slower without you telling it to. The locals don't surround you or interrogate you. They do something far more disarming. They make room. A small shift of a shoulder so you can pass. A gentle tilt of a tray so you can see. A hand gesture that guides you around a puddle without turning it into a big deal. You're included the way a stray cat gets included, quietly, generously, without requiring you to prove you deserve warmth. You pause at a table where tiny lantern ornaments lie in rows, little charms made of woven thread and thin bamboo, some shaped like miniature lanterns, some like lotus buds, some like simple knots meant to hold luck the way a pocket holds a coin. Your fingers hover, then choose one almost without thought. It's light, barely there, but the texture is real, thread crossing thread, a small bead of wood at the base, a loop for tying. You turn it in your palm and notice how it catches the lantern light, how the shadows inside its weave look like a private night. For a moment, your mind tries to bargain. You don't need this. You don't collect trinkets. You're practical. You're efficient. You're above sentimentality. And then your body answers with a quiet truth. You are tired, and small beautiful things help. You tuck the charm safely away, close to you, where it won't fall, where it can quietly become a thread of continuity through the night. A ridiculous little anchor. The kind your future self will be grateful for. As you move on, you pass folded fabrics, carved wooden spoons, bundles of herbs tied with string, and bowls that gleam faintly under lantern glow. Every stall is a small world. Every person is doing something steady, cutting, wrapping, weighing, stirring, arranging. You realize the market isn't simply a place to buy things. It's a place where the village shows itself in motions, how they feed each other, how they make light, how they treat the night as a partner rather than an enemy. Your shoulders loosen again, almost imperceptibly. Your face relaxes. The part of you that's always on guard, always scanning for danger, embarrassment, failure, finds less to cling to here. Even your sarcasm softens, like it's getting sleepy too. You're not winning anything. You're just existing among people who have been existing expertly for a long time. Eventually, you reach the far end of the lane, where the lanterns thin out and the market's warmth fades into the cooler breath of the open night. Behind you, the soft clink of scales and the hush of paper and bamboo continue like a heartbeat. Ahead, the path narrows again, and you feel the rice fields waiting, still, wet, reflective, ready to receive you back into their moonlit calm, now carrying the market's glow inside your chest like a borrowed ember. You step back out of the market's warm little pocket of life, and the air immediately feels wider, cooler, and slightly more honest. The lantern light behind you thins into scattered glows, like a constellation that's decided to stay low to the ground. Ahead, the path narrows again into a raised dike, just a slim ribbon of packed earth between flooded squares of rice and a darker channel of irrigation water that runs alongside like a silent companion. You walk carefully, because the edge is not negotiable. One lazy step and you're ankle-deep in mud, which would be funny in a wholesome way, except you'd also spend the rest of the night feeling like a damp sandwich. So you keep your balance, shoulders soft, eyes half-lidded but attentive, letting your feet learn the path's quiet rhythm. The rice shoots stand to your left like rows of tiny green needles sewing the night together. To your right, the canal reflects the sky in long black strips, interrupted by slow ripples that catch moonlight like brushed metal. The sounds change again. The market's hum has faded, and now you're wrapped in the countryside's layered hush, frogs calling from unseen pockets, insects buzzing in a steady, almost electrical veil, and the occasional whisper of wind moving through palm fronds. The night is not silent. It's simply not trying to entertain you. It's doing what it does, and you get to be included if you can behave yourself. A faint, damp sweetness rises from the canal, mixed with the smell of wet earth and crushed rice leaves. It's the scent of living systems doing their slow work. The water here isn't dramatic. It's purposeful. It's the village's quiet infrastructure, an artery that feeds the fields, a line that connects effort to harvest. You watch the surface drift past and think vaguely about how much of your own life depends on things you never notice until they fail. Your brain tries to spiral into gratitude and existential insight, then remembers you're supposed to be relaxing. So it politely sits down again. Fireflies begin to appear, first as a single blink near the canal bank, then another, then a scattered pattern of tiny pulses. They don't glow continuously. They breathe light. On off. On off. Like the night is blinking slowly, trying not to startle you. You stop walking just to watch. The fireflies hover above grasses and low shrubs, their bodies invisible except when they flare. Each flash feels like a small permission slip. Yes, you can slow down. Yes, you can do nothing for a moment. Yes, the world will continue without your supervision. You let your breath match their tempo, long inhale, longer exhale, and your chest loosens in a way that feels almost suspicious. As you continue, the canal bends and the path follows. The dike curves around a cluster of palms that lean over the water like they're protecting it from the sky. The moonlight filters through their fronds, creating thin bands of silver that slide across the canal's surface. The reflections look like moving paper, soft, layered, delicate. You start to understand why people talk about moonlit water as if it's alive. It is alive, in the only way water can be, always changing, always receiving. A deeper shadow shifts ahead, and your body does that tiny alert thing it always does. Micro-tension, quick scan, the ancient part of you whispering, unknown shape, might be danger. Then the shape resolves into the slow, rounded form of a buffalo standing half on the path, half in the grass, as if it owns both options and doesn't feel the need to choose. The buffalo is enormous in the way calm animals are enormous. It isn't trying to look big. It simply is. Its hide catches a little moonlight on the curve of its back. Its horns arc outward like quiet parentheses. It chews slowly, jaw working with the steady patience of something that has never once checked an email. You hesitate, because you're polite and also because you'd rather not be gently nudged into the canal by a creature that could probably move your entire life with one bored flick of its shoulder. But the buffalo barely acknowledges you. It blinks, chews, exhales. Its breath is visible for a second as a faint mist in the cooler air. The fireflies continue their soft blinking around it, as if they've appointed it the night's unofficial guardian. You edge past, giving it space, and you feel absurdly grateful for the lesson it's silently teaching. You don't have to react to everything. You can simply be. You can stand in your own presence with no performance. The buffalo does not hustle. The buffalo does not self-improve. The buffalo is already complete, and honestly it's a little rude how peaceful that is. Once you've passed, you glance back and see it still there, still chewing, still unbothered, like a living statue placed on the path to test whether you've learned to move gently. The canal narrows, and the grasses along its edge grow taller. You hear the soft plop of something dropping into the water. Maybe a frog, maybe a fish. The ripples travel outward in slow circles, catching lantern light from far behind you, then fading back into black. You keep walking, hands relaxed at your sides, fingers occasionally brushing your pocket where that tiny lantern charm rests. You don't pull it out. You just let its presence be enough. Lightweight, small texture, proof that you were in that warm lane of lanterns and you didn't dream it. The path becomes more intimate, more enclosed. Palms cluster closer. Banana leaves hang like dark flags overhead. The air feels thicker here, heavier with water and green life. And yet the moon still finds you, slipping through gaps in the leaves, laying pale patches on the path like stepping stones. You follow them without thinking. The night is guiding you in the simplest way, by revealing only what you need to see next. Fireflies gather more densely now, blinking in uneven constellations along the canal bank. Some float higher, among the palms, like tiny lanterns that forgot they're supposed to be human-made. Your eyes start to soften. Your mind starts to drift. You don't lose awareness. You simply stop gripping it like a weapon. You notice your own tiredness again, not as a problem but as a physical fact. The gentle heaviness behind your eyes, the slow warmth in your limbs, the sense that if you lay down right here on the dike, the earth might hold you like a mattress made of patience. You don't, because mosquitoes would absolutely throw a party and you would be the buffet. But the thought alone is comforting. You could rest if you wanted. Rest is possible. A faint breeze slides down the canal, cool against your skin. It carries the smell of water plants and distant cooking smoke, and somewhere, far off, you hear a temple bell tone again, softened by distance until it feels like a memory rather than a sound. You keep walking, letting the canal's slow curve pull you forward, letting the fireflies blink you into a calmer state, letting the buffalo's unbothered existence linger in your mind like a joke that's also advice. The night doesn't rush you toward a destination. It simply keeps unfolding, one narrow step at a time, and your body, finally, stops fighting the idea that moving slowly can still mean you're going somewhere. The canal's path gradually widens into open space again, like the night is easing its grip on your shoulders. The palms thin out. The banana leaves stop crowding your peripheral vision. And ahead, the dark horizon begins to sharpen into a shape you recognize even before your mind says its name. Those towers, those balanced peaks, that ancient geometry rising out of trees as if the earth itself is remembering. You don't march toward it like a tourist on a mission. You drift, because the night has trained you into softness. The dike becomes a broader track of packed earth. The rice fields fall behind to either side in quiet flooded squares, and the ground beneath your feet feels slightly firmer, as if even the soil is bracing itself in respect. Then you see the moat. It doesn't show up all at once. First it's the scent, cooler air, heavier with water. Then it's the faint shine, a band of darkness reflecting moonlight with an almost metallic calm. And finally it opens fully in front of you, the wide moat encircling Angkor what like a held breath, a deliberate boundary between the everyday world and something that refuses to be ordinary. Moonlight lays across the surface in a long sheet of silver. The water is so still that the reflection looks less like a mirror and more like an alternate reality. You see the temple's silhouette doubled, one Angkor in the air, one Angkor in the water, and it's hard to tell which one feels more real. The trees along the bank are ink-dark shapes, their edges softened by mist. You can feel the coolness of the moat rising toward your face like a gentle hand. You slow down instinctively, because the place demands it. Not through signs or fences, but through atmosphere. Your footsteps become quieter. Your breath becomes longer. Even your sarcasm turns into a small whisper inside your skull, as if it recognizes that this isn't the time to be clever. You walk along the moat's edge, following a path that curves gently, guiding you in a slow orbit. The temple remains mostly in silhouette, but moonlight catches occasional surfaces, stone edges, a slope, a corner that briefly gleams pale before dissolving back into shadow. It's the kind of visibility that feels earned. The night shows you what it wants, in the amount it wants, and you accept the terms because they are kinder than your usual habit of demanding everything immediately. A faint smell of incense drifts through the air, thin but distinct. It doesn't come from a blazing altar or a dramatic ritual. It's subtler, like someone burned a small stick earlier, and the scent lingered in the stones. It mixes with the smell of damp earth and lotus plants, and suddenly your chest feels like it has more room. Incense does that. It sneaks past your logic and goes straight for the part of you that stores memory and scent. The locals are here too, but in the same way they were in the fields, without fanfare. You notice them as silhouettes moving slowly along the path. Some pause, hands folded loosely, faces turned toward the temple as if they're letting their thoughts rest against it. Others walk in pairs, careful and quiet, as if sound itself might disturb something delicate. No one drags you into explanation. No one demands you understand. Their presence is simply an invitation to behave gently. You keep circling, and the moat's surface remains astonishingly calm, except for occasional ripples that spread like soft sighs when something touches the water. A leaf drops. A fish breaks the surface. The ripple travels, distorts the silver sheet, and then disappears as the water returns to stillness, unbothered and patient. You watch and realize your mind is trying to do that too. Let thoughts touch it, ripple through, then settle back into calm without clinging. On the far side of the moat, you can make out the darker bulk of the temple complex, walls and courtyards hidden behind trees. Angkor Wat itself rises above, the central towers forming their iconic peaks against the moon. You've seen pictures, of course. Everyone has. But pictures flatten it into something you know. Standing here, you feel how wrong that is. The temple isn't a thing you know. It's a thing that holds you in its presence and makes you quiet by accident. You notice the stone under your feet now, older, cooler. The path becomes more structured as you approach the causeway. You don't rush onto it. You pause at the edge, where the moat's water lies on both sides, and you let the moment land in your body. The causeway stretches forward, straight, firm, lined with low stone barriers worn smooth by centuries of hands, rain, and time. The lanterns you've followed all night are fewer here. Instead, moonlight and darkness do most of the work. Your eyes adjust, and you see faint details, the texture of stone, the slight unevenness of steps, the way moss and lichen cling in small patches like stubborn whispers of life. You step onto the causeway, and it feels like crossing a threshold. Not dramatic, not loud, just a subtle shift, like your mind has entered a room where it automatically lowers its voice. The water on both sides reflects the sky, and the temple's shadow stretches across it like an arm. Halfway along, you stop again, because you can't help it. The view is too balanced, too composed. The moat, the causeway, the temple silhouette, the moon above, all arranged with a quiet perfection that makes your usual chaos look like spilled groceries. You realize your grip on the tiny lantern charm in your pocket has tightened without you noticing. Your fingers press against it through fabric, as if needing proof that you are still you, still a human with small objects and small comforts, even in the presence of something so large and old. You let your hand relax. You don't need to cling. You can be small here without being erased. A soft breeze moves across the moat, and for a moment it carries a cooler breath that raises goosebumps on your arms. The air feels cleaner near the water. It tastes like stone and night and distance. Above you, a few clouds drift lazily across the moon, dimming the light for a moment, then clearing again. The temple's silhouette shifts from sharp to soft and back again, like it's inhaling. You continue forward, each step steady, your body falling into the rhythm of the causeway. The locals nearby move the same way, unhurried, respectful. You feel like you're walking through a shared understanding that doesn't need words. That's the strange comfort of places like this. They make you part of something larger without requiring you to explain yourself. Near the far end, you catch a faint glimmer of carved stone detail, an edge, a pattern, a hint of something intricate. It's like seeing the outline of a story you haven't read yet. You don't press closer to examine everything. You let it be partial, because partial is enough. The night has been teaching you that. You don't have to consume an experience to have it. You can simply receive. You reach a spot where the causeway meets the temple's outer space, still outside, still in the open, still under moonlight. The moat behind you looks like a dark ribbon. The rice fields feel far away now, though you can still sense their presence, like a memory of water and green. You stand there and let the temple's stillness settle into you. It doesn't fix your life. It doesn't solve your problems. It simply offers you a posture, steady, patient, enduring. And for the first time in a long time, your body believes it might be possible to carry that posture back with you. You don't stay pressed against the temple's gravity forever. Even stone patience has a way of nudging you onward, not by pushing you out, but by reminding you that stillness can travel with you. So you let the moat fall behind, the silver sheet of water returning to its quiet duties, and you follow a path that gradually trades carved stone and ancient shadow for open night and broader breath. The air changes as you move away from the temple complex. Less incense, more wet vegetation, more open water scent, like the world is rinsing itself. The ground under your feet becomes softer, sandier in places, and the darkness ahead feels wider. Lanterns appear again in the distance, but now they're different, fewer clustered along walls, more scattered and floating, as if someone has dropped warm embers onto the surface of a sleeping lake. This is the direction of Tunnel Sap, the great body of water that doesn't just sit there looking pretty. It swells and recedes with the seasons, breathing with the rains, expanding into the land and then pulling back again, as if it's practicing the oldest form of patience, taking what comes, letting it go, returning when it's time. You feel that rhythm even now, at night, in the damp air and the faint hush that comes with larger water. You reach the edge of a quieter inlet where the land gently gives up and becomes shoreline. The water is dark, but not empty. It holds reflections, thin threads of moonlight, the trembling duplicate of a palm silhouette. the occasional blinking of a firefly hovering near reeds. And out on the surface, lantern lights float low, warm and steady, moving slowly as boats glide through the night. You find yourself drawn toward them the way you were drawn toward the market. Only this time it's even softer. No stalls, no stacks, no hum of trade. Just the quiet choreography of people working with water and darkness, as if both are familiar colleagues. A small wooden boat rests near the bank, its shape half swallowed by shadow. Nearby, a longer canoe-like craft drifts in, barely disturbing the surface. You watch a figure step lightly, shifting weight with practiced ease, and the boat responds like an animal that knows its handler. No splashy drama? No. Look at me. Just competence. You don't need instructions. You simply move toward the edge, where the water laps gently against plants, and you let your gaze settle on what the locals are doing out there with their lanterns. Lantern fishing at night doesn't look like a spectacle. It looks like a conversation, between light and water, between human patience and fish curiosity, between the surface world and the darker world below. A lantern hangs low over the bow of a boat, casting a soft amber pool onto the water. That light reveals just enough, a patch of shimmering surface, tiny insects drawn close, and sometimes the faintest suggestion of movement beneath, like a thought passing through sleep. The boats glide slowly, so slowly that your nervous system starts to unclench just from watching. Paddles dip in and out with minimal sound. Nets rest ready, folded like fabric that knows its future shape. Sometimes a basket-like trap is lowered gently. Sometimes a fine net sweeps in a half-circle that's more elegant than it has any right to be, considering this is, in the end, work. The lanterns themselves have personality. Some are simple enclosed glows, steady and calm. Others flicker slightly, responding to small breezes, their light trembling over the water like a nervous smile. Every flicker makes ripples of brightness that travel outward and dissolve into dark. It's the kind of movement your mind could watch for hours, the same way you can watch rain on a window and suddenly forget you've ever had a problem. Along the shoreline, you notice structures that sit close to the water, wooden platforms, small stilted edges, signs of lives built in relationship with the lake. Farther out, faint silhouettes suggest floating homes or moored houseboats, low and quiet. You can't make out every detail, but you can sense the logic. When water is part of your life, you don't treat it as a backdrop. You treat it as a neighbor. You build with it in mind. You learn its moods. The locals on shore move with the same gentle ease you've seen all night. Someone adjusts a line, repositions a lantern, checks a small container. Another figure crouches near a bucket, hands moving with careful efficiency. There's no frantic scramble, no harsh urgency. It's as if the entire village has agreed that night work should still feel like night, low-voiced, soft-handed, respectful of sleep even while you're awake. You stand there, and your body begins to mirror the pace. Your breathing lengthens. Your shoulders soften. Your face relaxes into a neutral expression that feels like relief. And somewhere inside, a tired part of you admits that this is what you've been craving, not entertainment, not distraction, but a steady, human rhythm that doesn't demand you be sharp. A boat passes closer, and the lantern glow briefly brightens the reeds near you. You see water plants bending slightly, their edges outlined in amber. You see tiny insects darting through the light, and you see, for a moment, a faint ripple that suggests life below. The water holds secrets, but it doesn't flaunt them. It simply continues. Your fingers drift to your pocket again, checking the small lantern charm without pulling it out. You feel its woven texture through the fabric, and it's oddly comforting that you're carrying a miniature version of what you're watching now, light held gently, not as a weapon against darkness, but as a companion within it. You think briefly that this is the difference between harsh light and kind light. One blinds, the other guides. The night breeze shifts, bringing the scent of wet wood, algae, and distant cooking fires. It's not a perfume. It's real. It smells like people living near water and making do in ways that become tradition. Your mind tries, once again, to turn it into a moral lesson about simplicity and presence, and whatever else your brain likes to write in invisible notebooks. But the water refuses to be moralized. The water just is. The boats just are. The lanterns just glow. A small issue begins to form, not with panic, but with quiet awareness. The wind picks up slightly, and you notice a few lanterns on the boats wobble more than before. Their glow trembles over the water, less steady, as if the night is testing the boundary between calm and chaos. You watch hands adjust, small corrections, gentle anchoring. No one freaks out. No one makes it dramatic. The message is clear. Things can wobble and still remain held. You let that sink in. Because you wobble too. You wobble under work, under pressure, under the sheer weirdness of existing as a human with a brain that thinks at 3 a.m. This place doesn't punish wobble. It teaches you how to steady it. The boats continue their slow lantern-lit paths across the dark surface, painting moving pools of warmth on black water. You remain on shore, watching until your eyelids feel heavier, until the reflections start to blur into something dreamlike, until you can almost imagine the whole lake is a giant sleeping creature breathing softly beneath the moon. And when you finally turn away, the lantern lights follow you in your mind like afterimages, gentle, warm, unhurried, reminding you that even in darkness, people can work quietly, live steadily, and let the night stay kind. You leave the lake behind the way you leave a good dream, slowly, reluctantly, with your senses still carrying the glow as if it stained the inside of your eyelids. The shoreline fades into reeds and shadow, and the lanterns on the water become smaller, softer, until they're just warm dots drifting in your memory, like someone gently turned down the brightness of the world. Your feet find the packed earth path again. The night air feels slightly cooler away from open water, and the scent shifts back toward fields, wet soil, crushed leaves, the faint smoke of cooking fires that have almost finished their work. You walk without urgency. The village is not far, but your body has stopped treating distance like an enemy. You move the way the boats moved, slow enough to be steady, quiet enough to belong. The homes appear as low silhouettes under palms and fruit trees, their shapes softened by darkness and lantern glow. A few small lights hover near doorways. You notice how the lanterns here aren't decorative. They're practical warmth, placed where feet need guidance and hands need sight. Some swing slightly from beams, and the shadows they cast on walls look like soft, swaying fabric. A bamboo porch waits ahead, raised a little above the ground, the slats catching moonlight in thin pale stripes. The house behind it is simple, wood, woven walls, a roof that breathes, yet it feels incredibly deliberate, like a place built by people who understand weather, insects, and the value of airflow. A woven mat lies rolled near the edge. A low table sits close to the porch's center, and on it rests a clay pot that gives off a faint herbal steam. The smell hits your face gently. Lemongrass, ginger, maybe a hint of pandan. Your nervous system responds like it recognizes an old lullaby. The locals welcome you without ceremony. No big performance. No fussing that makes you feel like a burden. Just the quiet efficiency of hospitality that has been practiced long enough to become graceful. Someone shifts a mat so it's ready. Someone places a small bowl of water near the porch steps so you can rinse your hands and the dust off your fingers. Because apparently the night here believes in cleanliness the way it believes in moonlight. Softly, consistently, without arguing. You sit down on the bamboo slats, and the porch gives a faint creak beneath you, a gentle reminder that you are real and heavy and human. The bamboo feels cool through your clothes. Your body releases tension in small increments, shoulders lowering, jaw unclenching, spine easing into a posture that isn't defensive. You realize you've been bracing yourself for so long that, not bracing, feels like a skill you've forgotten. The porch teaches it back to you in silence. A small jar appears on the table, lid off. Inside is a pale paste, thicker than lotion, smoother than mud, with a faint yellow-green tint. It smells sharp and earthy, like crushed leaves and roots. You watch a local dab a bit onto their own forearm, spreading it thin with practiced strokes. The paste leaves a matte sheen, not greasy, more like a protective film. It's the kind of thing that looks boring until you realize boring is exactly what you want when you're trying to survive insects, humidity, and sun without turning your skin into a battlefield. You're guided gently into doing the same. A small amount goes onto your palms. You rub them together, and the scent blooms, lemongrass brightness, turmeric warmth, maybe camphor's cool edge. You smooth it onto your arms, your neck, the backs of your hands. The paste feels slightly cooling at first, then neutral, like it becomes part of your skin rather than sitting on top of it. It's described as a sun shield and a bug shield in one, an herbal layer of common sense. You're not sure you fully believe it will protect you from the tropical sun tomorrow, but in this moment, at night, it already protects you from feeling helpless. And honestly, that's half the job. You glance down at your hands, now faintly scented, and you think about the absurd contrast between this and the way you usually care for yourself. Late-night caffeine, harsh lighting, scrolling until your brain feels like static. Here, care is quiet and physical and immediate. Put this on. Drink that. Sit. Breathe. Let the night do what it's good at. The clay pot is poured into a small cup. The liquid inside is warm, pale, and fragrant. You lift it carefully, letting the steam rise toward your face. The first sip is gentle, herbal, slightly sweet, with a heat that spreads slowly through your chest. It doesn't jolt you awake. It nudges you toward ease. It feels like the opposite of adrenaline. Out beyond the porch, the village settles into deeper quiet. The market is far behind now. The lake lanterns are distant. Here, the sounds are domestic, an occasional soft footstep, a quiet clink, the faint rustle of leaves as wind moves through palms. Frogs still call from the fields, steady and unbothered, like the night's background choir. Somewhere a gecko makes its small clicking sounds, and you find yourself weirdly grateful. Even the tiny creatures here seem to be doing their jobs calmly. You shift your weight, and the bamboo slats respond with another soft creak. The porch rocks you ever so slightly, not like a swing, more like the house acknowledging your presence. You let your eyelids lower for a moment. The herbal scent on your skin rises with each breath, and it begins to associate itself with safety. You feel your muscles unclench in places you didn't realize were clenched. Your scalp softens. Your hands open. Your fingers brush your pocket again, checking the little lantern charm. It's still there. You pull it out briefly and hold it in your palm. In the lantern glow, its woven threads cast tiny shadows on your skin. It's ridiculous how comforting it is. This small object, this small proof that you walked through light and market and water and temple shadow and didn't just imagine it. You tuck it back away, close again, like a promise you don't need to announce. A thin mosquito net is unfurled nearby, draped with the same casual competence as the lantern maker's folding paper. It hangs like a soft veil, a boundary that says, you may rest without being eaten alive. The idea alone makes your body relax further. You realize how much of your fatigue comes from fighting invisible things, deadlines, expectations, worries. Here, even the invisible things have practical solutions. Net, paste, tea, porch. Done. You lie back on the mat, letting the bamboo beneath you support your weight. The air moves through the woven walls, cool enough to keep you comfortable, warm enough to keep you from feeling lonely. The moonlight leaks through gaps in the roofline, drawing faint pale lines across the porch like slow-moving water. Your breath deepens. The herbal sunshield on your skin feels like a gentle cloak. The lanterns outside flicker once, then steady, as if reminding you that wobble is allowed, but steadiness is possible. Your mind offers up one last attempt to plan tomorrow, to check something, to worry preemptively, because it's addicted to vigilance the way some people are addicted to sugar. You let the thought pass without grabbing it, like the moat water letting ripples fade, like the lake lantern sliding onward, like the buffalo chewing without drama. You settle fully into the porch's quiet. The night wraps around you in layers, field sounds, leaf rustle, distant water memory, soft lantern glow. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel like you're running towards sleep. You feel like sleep is already here, sitting beside you, patient and unbothered, waiting for you to stop performing and simply arrive. The porch holds you for a while in that sweet in-between state where your thoughts stop being sharp objects and start becoming slow clouds. Eventually, the night thins. Not dramatically. More like someone slowly turns the page. You wake before the sun does, because the village wakes before the sun does, and your body, traitorously, decides to follow the local schedule like it's always been this disciplined. The air is cooler now, the kind of cool that feels clean against your face. A faint mist hangs low over the ground. The lantern glow outside is dimmer, not because it's gone, but because dawn is quietly arriving to take over the job. You sit up, and the bamboo slats whisper their soft creak again. Your skin still carries that herbal paste, now mixed with the night's humidity, and the scent rises gently when you move, lemongrass and earth and something root deep. It's oddly comforting, like your body has been marked as safe to rest, and hasn't been revoked yet. You swing your feet down, and the mat's woven texture presses into your soles. Your pocket still holds the tiny lantern charm. You touch it with your fingertips, not pulling it out, just confirming it's real. a small anchor, a small promise, a small reminder that the night wasn't a scrolling trance you'll forget by noon. Outside, the village is awake in the softest way. Not loud, not bustling, just active enough that you can sense it. Shadows moving with purpose, a quiet clink of metal, water being poured, a bundle of something lifted and carried. The world is preparing itself without asking you to be impressed. You follow the movement toward the fields, stepping off the porch and onto damp earth that feels cool and slightly springy. The path you walked last night is familiar now, but it looks different without lanterns doing all the storytelling. Pre-dawn light is a shy thing. It doesn't flood. It suggests. The rice fields ahead are still dark, but you can see their outlines more clearly. Flat water squares, neat rows of green shoots, and the faint silver of dew collecting on everything that will hold it. As you walk, the air coats your ankles with moisture. Your shoes pick up tiny flecks of mud. Your breath comes out slow and visible in faint wisps. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls, not like an alarm, more like a stubborn announcement that time is moving whether you approve or not. Frogs quiet down a little, as if handing the microphone to morning. The fields are alive with people, but in a calm, organized way. No frantic shouting, no chaotic rushing. Bodies move in practiced patterns. Someone carries a curved sickle that catches the pre-dawn light in a thin, pale edge. Someone else balances bundles of stalks with the ease of long familiarity. A few figures bend low, hands working close to the ground. You notice how the whole scene feels choreographed, not for show, but because repetition turns work into a rhythm. You step onto the narrow dike between patties, and dew immediately kisses your legs. It clings to your trousers and cools your skin through fabric. It's not unpleasant. It's a kind of gentle reality check. Yes, you are outside. Yes, you are in water and soil and growing things. Yes, this is not your climate-controlled room where you pretend you don't have a body until it complains. A local gestures for you to follow, guiding you to a patch where rice stalks stand taller and heavier, their heads bowed with grain. The plants look humble, but you can tell they're full, each stalk carrying the result of months of sun, water, and patience. You feel a small, quiet awe. Not the loud kind that turns into a social media caption. The private kind that sits behind your ribs and makes you breathe differently. A sickle is placed into your hand. The handle is smooth, worn by many palms. The blade curves inward like a crescent moon. You hold it carefully, because you're fond of your fingers and would like to keep them attached, thanks. Your grip feels clumsy at first. City hands, modern hands, hands that mostly type and swipe and pretend those are the only motions that count. But the locals don't mock you. They simply continue, and their calm competence becomes a lesson your body can copy. You bend down, gathering a handful of stalks with one hand. The rice leaves are sharp-edged in a quiet way, enough to remind you they're plants with boundaries. You position the sickle, and you pull. The blade slices through with a soft, satisfying sound, less violent, more like cutting fabric. The stalks come free in your hand, warm from stored sun even in the cool morning air. You straighten a little, and your lower back sends a polite memo that you are not, in fact, a traditional farmer. You answer with a gentle internal sigh and adjust your posture. You keep going. Bundle, slice, lift. Bundle, slice, lift. Each repetition is small and complete. There's no giant abstract goal. There's only this handful, then the next. Dew gathers on your wrists. Your fingers become damp and slightly sticky with plant sap. The smell of rice, green, fresh, faintly sweet, rises around you. The fields breathe out cool mist as the first light begins to change color, shifting from deep blue to a softer gray. The horizon brightens almost imperceptibly, like a slow smile forming. As you work, you notice how people move together without talking much. A glance, a small hand motion, a shift of weight. The coordination is quiet, efficient, intimate. It's community expressed through timing. No one needs to prove they're the hardest worker. The work simply gets done, because everyone is part of it. You start to fall into the rhythm, and something surprising happens. Your mind stops trying to run ahead. It can't multitask here. It can't rehearse arguments or catastrophize future meetings while you're balancing on a narrow dike with a blade in your hand and dew soaking your legs. The present moment demands just enough attention to crowd out the usual noise, but not so much that you feel stressed. It's the sweet spot, the rare thing. Focus that feels like rest. Your breath becomes steady. Your shoulders relax into the motion. You feel your muscles warming as you repeat the simple pattern. There's a meditative quality to it, not the kind sold in expensive apps, but the kind built into real life when you do one thing fully and let it be enough. You glance up and see the fields stretching outward, water reflecting the paling sky, rows of green, figures moving like slow shadows. Farther away, the faint silhouette of Temple Tower still hovers beyond the trees, barely visible now, like a memory watching the day begin. It's a strange, grounding combination. Ancient stone behind you, living grain in your hands, dew on your ankles, dawn in your face. You cut another bundle. You lift it. You set it neatly with the others. Your pocket presses lightly against the lantern charm as you move, and you realize the charm isn't just a trinket anymore. It's become a quiet bridge between last night's lantern glow and this morning's labor, between beauty and sustenance, between reflection and action. The sky continues to brighten. Birds begin to call from the palms. The mist thins. The dew remains, stubborn and sparkling, coating the rice leaves like tiny glass beads. And you keep moving, one careful cut at a time, feeling, without needing to announce it, that you've been welcomed into the village's most honest kind of lesson: how to work without rushing, how to be tired without collapsing, how to let the morning arrive slowly and still trust it will arrive. The harvest doesn't end with a heroic sunrise finale. It ends with bundles carried, hands rinsed, and the quiet understanding that food is a chain, not a single moment. As the sky turns from deep blue to a thin gold wash, you follow the others back along the dikes, leaving the cut stalks stacked in neat piles, like the fields are being folded away until the next season. Your legs feel pleasantly heavy. Not, I'm ruined forever. Heavy, more like, I use my body for something honest. Heavy. Dew still clings to your ankles. The herbal paste on your skin has faded into a lemongrass whisper. You touch your pocket once, checking that the tiny lantern charm is still there. It is. Good. Your nervous system does not need extra drama before breakfast. Back in the village, morning arrives quietly, like a careful hand opening a curtain. Smoke rises in thin strands. Water splashes into basins. People move with steady purpose, not rushing, not performing productivity, just doing what needs doing in the order that makes sense. You're guided toward an open-air kitchen beside a house, roofed with palm thatch and held up by posts worn smooth. The air under it is warmer than outside, scented with charred wood, steamed rice, and something caramel deep that makes your tired brain pay attention. A shallow pan sits over coals. In it, palm sugar melts slowly into dark amber gloss, thickening at the center like sunlight deciding to become solid. A chunk of palm sugar, rough, golden brown, is shaved with a knife into thin curls. The curls fall into a bowl like delicate wood shavings that happen to be edible. Another handful drops into the pan. Heat persuades it to soften, then surrender, then pool into syrup. The smell grows richer, caramel and smoke, with an earthy sweetness that doesn't shout. It just warms the inside of your ribs. You're handed a mortar and pestle, because staring dreamily at syrup is not a job. The pestle is heavy and cool. You begin to pound rice carefully at first, afraid you'll offend tradition with bad technique. Then you find the rhythm, lift, drop, and the sound turns into soft percussion. The grains shift, break, and release their clean starch scent. Your breathing quietly sinks to the pattern, and your mind stops sprinting ahead for once. Around you, the kitchen moves like a slow orbit. Someone rinses rice until the water clears. Someone ties pan and leaves and lowers them into a pot so fragrance can steep without urgency. Someone adjusts the coals with a calm hand, keeping heat low and even. Steam rises in pale curls, and the whole space feels like a lesson in steady attention, not frantic, not lazy, just present. The wooden spoon is placed into your hand. You take over stirring the palm sugar, and at first you do it like a modern person, too fast, too eager, convinced speed equals competence. The syrup clings to the spoon, stretching into sticky threads that snap back with tiny pops. You slow down. You let the spoon travel in patient circles. The syrup smooths into a glossy flow, and your shoulders drop as if they were waiting for permission to stop trying so hard. You notice the quiet logic behind the sweetness. Sap collected from palms is boiled down over hours, then tended until it thickens into syrup, then cooled toward sugar. Heat and time, repeated, dependable. It isn't magic. It's someone showing up every day. A pot of rice porridge bubbles nearby, pale and creamy, bursting in tiny soft blips at the surface. A ladle lifts it, and it falls back like a warm ribbon, steam fogging the air. Small bowls wait with shredded coconut and a pinch of salt. Nothing complicated, just balance. Sweetness, softness, a little edge to keep it honest. Then a tiny problem tries to audition for. Ruin the vibe. Ants drawn by the palm sugar, forming a confident little line along the table's edge. Your first instinct is irritation, because you're tired and your brain enjoys control. Your second instinct, shaped by moonlit motes and unbothered buffalo, is calm. A damp cloth wipes the sticky trail. A bowl of water becomes a gentle boundary. The ants redirect, and the morning continues, unoffended. When the syrup reaches the right thickness, you lift the spoon and watch a heavy ribbon drip back into the pan, folding onto itself, glossy and dark. Your wrist aches in a small, satisfying way. You set the spoon down, rinse your fingers, and the sweetness still lingers faintly on your skin, like the morning refusing to let go. A bowl is placed in your hands. Warmth fogs your face. The porridge is soft, The palm sugar swirled through it like amber ink, the coconut adding gentle texture. You take a bite, and heat spreads through your mouth and chest, steadying you instead of jolting you. It tastes like effort made edible. You sit under the thatch, listening to coals crackle and birds begin their calls beyond the palms. Outside, the rice fields hold the brightening sky in their water mirrors, still damp with dew, still quietly working. In your pocket, the lantern charm presses lightly against your thigh, a private thread tying last night's glow to this morning's warmth. Patience isn't an idea here. It's a method, a low flame, a steady stir, a bowl held with both hands. And as you finish the last warm mouthful, your tiredness shifts shape. It stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a signal. Yes, you've been living, and yes, you're allowed to soften. The morning's warmth settles into you for a while, and you move through the rest of the day with that rare, gentle steadiness that usually only happens when you're half asleep or freshly forgiven. You help with small chores that don't demand heroism. Washing bowls, stacking bundles, carrying water. Simple motions that keep your hands busy and your mind quiet. The village continues its calm pace around you, and you start to understand something that feels mildly insulting. The world can function beautifully without you gripping it like a steering wheel. By late afternoon, the light softens again. Shadows lengthen. Heat loosens its hold. The rice fields return to that reflective mood, water catching the sky in pale gradients, the green shoots standing like neat handwriting across the surface. Lantern frames appear here and there, being checked, being carried, being stored, because night is always coming, and the village plans for it the way it plans for harvests, steadily, without drama. You wander along the familiar dike paths, letting your feet remember last night's rhythm. Your skin still holds a trace of that herbal sunshield, faint now, but present enough that every so often you catch a whisper of lemongrass and think, oh right, people can take care of themselves without making it a whole personality. A buffalo stands in the distance again, chewing with that same calm superiority, as if it's been assigned to haunt you until you stop overcomplicating everything. And then, somewhere between a slow turn of the path and a distracted brush of your pocket, your fingers close around nothing. It's subtle at first, like your body is the first to notice, and your brain is still lounging. Your hand goes back again, checking. The fabric folds under your fingertips. The pocket feels lighter. Too light. You stop walking. The air holds still around you for a beat, the way it does right before you realize you've lost something small but emotionally unreasonable. You reach deeper into the pocket, as if the charm might magically reappear if you rummage with enough conviction. Nothing. No woven texture. No tiny bead. No loop. Just emptiness and the slow, sinking certainty that your ridiculous little anchor has slipped away. Your mind tries to pretend it's fine. It tries to say you're an adult, you don't need charms, you can survive without sentimental objects. Your body replies with a quiet, stubborn ache. Because the charm isn't expensive or rare or important in any logical way. It's important in the only way your nervous system cares about. It holds continuity. It's proof you were here. It's the warm thread tying lantern alley to bamboo porch to dew-soaked harvest to palm sugar comfort. Losing it feels like losing a small piece of the night that taught you how to breathe again. You stand on the dike and look back at the path you've walked, as if your eyes might spot a tiny woven glint in the dirt. The rice fields stretch out in calm squares on either side, reflecting the late sky. Everything looks too clean, too smooth, too endless. A lost object in this landscape feels like a needle tossed into a quiet sea. You turn around slowly, retracing your steps. Your shoes press into packed earth, and each footfall feels louder than it should, not because the world is noisy, but because your attention is suddenly sharp. Your gaze sweeps the path. Little stones, dried leaves, a faint footprint pattern, a thin strip of grass bent where someone passed. Your mind starts assembling a timeline, because of course it does. You had it at the market. You checked it at the porch. You felt it during harvest. You remember the gentle press of it against your thigh in the kitchen. So it has to be somewhere between there and here. Somewhere in the gentle hours you thought you were safe from losing things. The locals notice your shift immediately. Not with alarm, not with interrogation, just with the same attentive calm they've shown you all along. A small group drifts closer, their movements easy, their presence steadying. They don't treat you like a problem. They treat you like a person who dropped something. And in this village, people help each other pick things up. Simple as that. You follow them back along the field edge, then toward the narrower paths that cut between paddies. The light continues to fade, inch by inch. The sky transitions into evening without announcing itself. The rice fields begin to darken, and the water's surface becomes more reflective, turning the last color of sunset into long, trembling streaks. Lanterns begin to appear again, first near homes, then along dikes, then scattered deeper into the fields where people are moving with gentle purpose. Some lanterns hang low, guiding feet. Others are carried, their warm glow bobbing as bodies walk. The sight should comfort you, and it almost does, but it also makes the missing charm feel more personal, like you lost a tiny lantern while surrounded by hundreds of them, an impressive achievement in irony. Night settles fully. The moon rises again, not identical to last night's moon, but close enough to feel like a familiar face. The paddies turn into dark mirrors. Fireflies begin their slow blinking along the canal edges, breathing light in and out as if reminding you that not everything lost stays lost. Sometimes it simply waits in the dark until you're quiet enough to notice it. You walk deeper into the fields now, guided by lantern glow and the steady pace of the locals. Your eyes scan the ground where the dike narrows. You watch for the slightest shape that doesn't belong, a loop of thread, a tiny bead, a small woven knot caught in grass. The path feels longer at night, not because it changes, but because darkness makes every step more deliberate. You move carefully, balancing on the raised earth with water on both sides, the moon reflected below you so perfectly it feels like you're walking between two skies. Your mind tries to spike into frustration. It tries to say, of course you lose things. Of course you can't hold on to calm. Of course the universe can't let you have one tiny charm. But then you remember the buffalo. You remember lantern fishing, hands adjusting wobbling lights without panic. You remember the moat water letting ripples fade. The night has been teaching you a different response. So you let the frustration pass like a ripple, and you return to looking. The search becomes its own kind of meditation. You slow your breathing. You soften your gaze. You stop lunging toward conclusions. You start noticing the ground the way you noticed the lantern maker's hands, with patient attention. Dew has returned, faint and cool, coating grass tips. The dike's edges crumble slightly in places, leaving tiny ridges of soil. A beetle crosses your path with absolute confidence, as if it has never lost anything in its life. You envy it briefly, then move on. Farther ahead, lanterns cluster near a bend where the dike splits into two narrow lines, each leading into more patties, more water squares, more moonlit reflections. The fields feel suddenly vast again. You realize you could wander in circles out here if you let panic drive. The locals guide you with quiet certainty, choosing one path, then another, scanning the edges where things might fall, where thread might snag, where a small charm might catch on a rice shoot and hang there like a tiny secret. You pause at a spot where the wind brushes the rice tops, making them sway in a soft wave. The moonlight catches the movement, and the field looks like dark silk being stroked. The beauty should make you forget the charm. Instead, it sharpens your longing for it, because the charm felt like a piece of this beauty you could carry. Without it, the night feels slightly more temporary, like something you might wake up from in doubt. So you keep going, step by careful step. Lantern glow ahead. Fireflies blinking along the canal. Water mirrors below you. Temple silhouettes far off, still watching, still patient. And as you move deeper into the moonlit maze of rice fields, you feel something shift. Not the charm reappearing yet, not the problem solved, but your own posture toward loss. You're not rushing. You're not snapping at yourself. You're searching the way this place lies, slowly, together, with steady hands and soft breath, trusting that the night can hold small things safely until you're ready to find them. The lanterns ahead bunch together near the split in the dike, and for a moment it feels like you're walking toward a small floating constellation that decided to land on Earth for the night. Their amber light spills onto the packed soil, into the water squares, across the rice shoots. It's the kind of glow that makes you believe the charm you lost might be sitting somewhere nearby, waiting like a shy animal. Then the air changes. Not in a poetic, subtle way. In a very practical, tropical way that says, "Congratulations, you've been enjoying serenity, now please meet weather." A breeze slides through the rice tops and doesn't stop. The fronds of nearby palms start to hiss, and the rice stalks sway in tighter waves. The lantern flames or bulbs tremble behind their paper skins, their light wobbling as if the night itself is suddenly nervous. You smell it next, the sharp mineral scent of rain before it arrives, like the sky opening a cold drawer. The locals don't panic. They don't even look surprised. Their bodies shift into a different tempo, still calm, but quicker, more purposeful. Hands reach for lantern cords. Someone lifts a lantern off a low stake and cradles it close. Another person gathers a few lanterns together and moves them toward higher ground. You watch the change ripple through the group like a quiet command that doesn't need words. The monsoon is breathing in. A distant rumble rolls across the horizon, low and heavy, not dramatic thunder meant for movies, but the kind that sounds like a big animal turning over in its sleep. You glance up and see clouds drifting over the moon, thickening, softening the light. The rice fields darken by degrees. The reflections blur. Fireflies still blink along the canal edges, but their tiny lights look more urgent now, like they're trying to keep the night from being swallowed. The first drops hit, fat, warm drops that land on your skin and your shoulders like someone flicked water from a hand. They make small rings in the patties, spreading outward in perfect circles that instantly destroy the mirror-smooth calm you've been living inside. Your instinctive reaction is the old one: brace, tighten, mentally complain. Your brain starts drafting an internal rant about timing, inconvenience, and why the universe can't let you have one peaceful evening without adding moisture. And then you remember the buffalo, chewing like time doesn't exist. You remember the moat water absorbing ripples without turning them into a crisis. You remember lantern fishing hands adjusting wobbling light without drama. So you let your jaw unclench. You let your shoulders drop a fraction. You accept the rain the way the village accepts the rain, not as an enemy, but as a fact with a solution. The drizzle becomes a curtain in seconds. Rain thickens, the drops multiplying until the air is full of moving water. The lanterns flicker harder now. Paper skins darken as they drink in moisture. A few lanterns sway wildly, their cords tugging, their frames protesting. One dips slow enough that its glow kisses the water surface, and you feel a little spike of alarm. Because if those lanterns go out, the paths will vanish into black, and your careful search for the missing charm will turn into a confused stumble in a wet maze. The locals move like they've done this 100 times, which, of course, they have. A woven mat appears, unrolled and held upright by two people to make a quick windbreak. Palm fronds are pulled down and angled like a roof. Someone drags a light wooden platform closer, raising lanterns above splashing water. You watch a lantern get slid carefully into a large glass jar, the kind used for storage, turning it into a protected warm heart inside transparent walls. The jar catches rain on its surface while the light inside stays steady, glowing like stubborn calm. You step in to help, because you're here, your hands exist, and you've already learned that watching is nice but participating is how your brain truly relaxes. You lift one lantern by its cord, careful not to crush its damp paper. The frame is light, but the responsibility feels heavy for a second, because it's absurd how quickly you can become emotionally attached to fragile light. The rain hits your arms and face, soaking you almost instantly. Your clothes cling. Your hair does whatever it wants. You feel mildly betrayed by gravity and water. But there's also something strangely relieving in being thoroughly rained on. You can't maintain a polished persona while water runs down your forehead. You can't look put together in a monsoon. The rain strips you down to a simpler truth. You are here, you are wet, and you are still fine. Under the makeshift palm frond shelter, lanterns gather in clusters. Their glow overlaps, creating deeper amber pockets where faces and hands move in warm light. Someone wipes water off a lantern's frame with a cloth, gently, like tending a small animal. Another person checks the cords, tightening knots so the wind can't steal them. The whole scene becomes a kind of quiet emergency ritual, not frantic, not loud, just steady care. The wind gusts again, stronger, and the rain angles sideways. A few lanterns strain at their cords, pulling toward the fields as if they want to escape into the storm. The group responds with tiny adjustments, moving lanterns closer to the shelter's center, adding another mat as a wall, lowering the lanterns slightly so they don't catch the wind like sails. You notice the logic. Reduce surface area, increase protection, keep the light close to the ground. It's simple engineering, built from experience and embodied knowledge. You find yourself holding the mat edge with both hands, bracing it against the wind. The woven fibers press into your palms. Water splatters on your wrists. The lantern glow behind the mat warms the backs of your hands, and you're suddenly aware of how perfectly the sensation matches your life. Pressure on one side, warmth on the other, and you standing in the middle trying not to tip. Your mind tries to slip into old panic patterns. What if the charm is washed away? What if you never find it? What if you've lost the one small token that made the night feel carryable? But the rain gives you a different metaphor. Not everything is saved by gripping harder. Some things are saved by sheltering, by adapting, by letting the storm pass while you keep the flame protected. The locals begin repositioning lanterns along a slightly higher stretch of path, building a sheltered corridor using jars, palm fronds, and the angled mats, an improvised lantern tunnel that still marks the route through the fields. The light doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It becomes closer, more clustered, more protected. And somehow, that makes it feel even more intimate, like the village is gathering its warmth into one place and inviting you into it. You step into the corridor, rain still drumming on leaves overhead. The sound becomes a steady blanket, a thick, rhythmic hush that muffles everything else. The lanterns glow inside jars, their light refracting through wet glass, making little halos. Each one looks like a small captured sunrise. Your breathing slows without you telling it to. The storm outside can be wild. Inside this corridor, the night stays kind. You glance down at the ground, still scanning out of habit for the missing charm. But you don't lunge. You don't spiral. You simply keep looking softly, letting your eyes do their quiet work while the rain does its loud work. You realize your calm hasn't been stolen by the weather. It's been tested, and it's still here, sheltered like a flame behind glass. The monsoon keeps pouring, but the lanterns remain, trembling, yes, wobbling like your tired nervous system, but unbroken. And as you stand there in warm amber light, soaked and steady, you understand the village's lesson in its simplest form. Storms happen. Light doesn't have to vanish. Sometimes it just needs a jar, a frond, a mat, and a few patient hands to hold it until the sky exhales again. The storm doesn't end with a dramatic snap. It eases the way a tense body eases, slowly, grudgingly, drop by drop. The wind softens first. The rain stops coming sideways and starts falling straight down, like it's getting tired of being aggressive. Then the thick curtain thins into a steady drizzle, and finally into scattered drops that sound more like a gentle tapping than a demand. When the clouds begin to slide away from the moon, the whole landscape seems to exhale. The lantern corridor, jars glowing under palm fronds, holds its warmth, but now it's surrounded by a world that is waking back up. The paddies are full of ripples. The dike paths shine with wetness. Water clings to rice leaves and hangs from palm tips, catching lantern light in tiny sparkling beads. The locals shift again, returning to their slower rhythm. Mats are folded. Palm fronds are adjusted back into place. Lanterns are lifted out of jars and rehung where they belong, paper skins damp but intact. Nobody celebrates. Nobody declares victory. The storm came, the storm passed, and people did what people do, kept the light steady. You step out from the corridor and feel the cooler air on your skin. The rain has rinsed the world clean. The air smells sharper now, wet earth, green plants, and the mineral scent of water settling back into soil. You take a deep breath, and it feels like inhaling a freshly washed sheet. And because the night has apparently decided you're ready for a different kind of story, the path turns toward the river. Not the big dramatic river you see in postcards, but the smaller, local waterways that weave through this region like veins. The canal you walked beside earlier now feels more alive, fuller, its banks fed by the storm. You follow the dike as it slopes gently toward a broader channel, where water moves with a slow, deliberate pull. Here, under the returning moonlight, the surface looks like dark silk. It carries reflections, lanterns, palm fronds, a thin band of sky, but they slide and distort because the water is not still like the moat. This water travels. It has a direction. It has a quiet insistence. The locals around you begin to move with a different kind of attentiveness, not anxious, but respectful. You notice small gestures, hands lightly touching a carved post, a brief pause near a bend in the bank, a quiet rearranging of lanterns so their light falls on the water in a particular way. It's not superstition as entertainment. It's something older, a way of treating water as a presence, not a resource. The stories come without dialogue, seeping into the atmosphere the way incense scent does. You see small carved figures near the bank, serpentine shapes, worn smooth by time, suggesting the Naga, the great river serpent of local myth. You've heard of Nagas before, perhaps as an idea, perhaps as a decoration on temple stairs. Here, in the wet night, they feel less like art and more like a symbol of the river's personality, protective, powerful, patient, capable of both gentleness and destruction. You stand near the bank and watch the current. The rainwater from the paddies feeds into it in tiny channels, making soft joining sounds, trickles merging, little streams becoming one. It's like listening to many quiet thoughts consolidate into a single calmer mind. The moon's reflection breaks into moving fragments, and the lantern glows stretch into trembling orange lines across the surface. You remember the moat's stillness, the lake's slow glide, and now this river's subtle pull. Water here is never just water. It's mirrored sky, it's food, it's travel, its boundary, its story. And in the village's imagination, it's also inhabited by spirits, by protectors, by things that keep people humble. You walk along the bank where stone steps descend into the water. The steps are slick from rain, and you move carefully. You notice offerings placed nearby, small clusters of flowers, a leaf-folded cup, a stick of incense burned down to ash. Nothing extravagant. Nothing showy. Just small acknowledgments that the river is not yours to command. A quiet unease stirs in you, and you don't immediately know why. The storm has passed. The lanterns are steady. You're not in danger. And yet your body feels alert, like it's listening for something. Maybe it's the river's movement. Maybe it's the mythic atmosphere. Maybe it's the fact that your little lantern charm is still missing, and your mind keeps returning to it like a tongue worrying a gap in a tooth. Then you spot something in the water, just a small swirl of bubbles near the steps, a brief disturbance that collapses back into flow. It could be a fish. It could be a submerged branch shifting. It could be absolutely nothing. But your tired brain, still obsessed with continuity, turns it into a sign. Your pulse lifts. You lean forward slightly, eyes narrowing, as if the river might return your charm like a polite apology. Nothing rises. The water smooths out. The current continues. And your body, awkwardly, relaxes again, a little embarrassed by its own jumpiness. The locals remain calm. They treat the river the way you treat a sleeping animal, with quiet respect, with awareness of boundaries. They adjust the lantern so the light hits a particular patch of water, illuminating the edge of reeds. They move a little farther along the bank, where the current slows near a curve. They gesture you to follow, guiding you without needing words. You walk with them along the river bend, lantern light pooling on wet stones and shining on water plants. The Naga carvings appear again, on a low post, on the edge of a small shrine-like structure. Their serpent bodies curve in repeating patterns, and you realize the shape is everywhere, in the river's bend, in the rice dikes, in the lantern cords, in the sickle's curve. The Naga is not just a mythic creature. It's a symbol of flow, of serpentine persistence, of life moving through the land. You pause where the river's surface is calmer, and the reflections return briefly, moon above, lantern below. The calm patch looks like a small window into stillness within movement. It makes you think of your own mind. Even when you're moving through life's current, there are pockets of calm you can step into if you choose. The search for the charm hasn't ended. But something about being near the river changes how you carry the problem. The missing object feels less like a personal failure and more like a small story the night is unfolding. The river doesn't rush toward conclusions. It keeps going, steady, patient, pulling all things forward. And you, standing on the wet stones under returning moonlight, begin to trust that the night's gentle logic will lead you where you need to go, even if it doesn't tell you the route in advance. You leave the river bend with its Naga curves and wet stones, still smelling rain on the air. Lanterns along the path glow steadier now, their paper skins drying in the breeze, their light no longer trapped behind glass but still carrying that survived the monsoon's softness. The village guides you toward a quieter corner near the temple grounds, where the ground firms up underfoot and the air turns faintly cool with sandstone. You notice it before you see it, the sound changes. Fewer frogs, less open water hush, and more tiny, deliberate taps, clean and rhythmic, like someone knocking softly on the earth's oldest door. A low workshop sits under a simple roof, open on the sides so the night can pass through. Lanterns hang at the corners, throwing warm pools of light onto tables and stone blocks. The smell is immediate: damp stone, fine dust, old moss, and the faint metallic tang of tools handled 1,000 times. Stone slabs rest on wooden supports, each one holding a piece of carved story, curves, petals, repeating borders, and figures whose calm faces refuse to hurry. Some carvings are crisp. Others are worn and softened by rain and heat, like the stone has been touched by time the way skin is touched by weather. You feel the urge to reach out and test the cool texture with your fingertips. But you pause, because reverence arrives in you without instructions. The artisans move with quiet focus. Their hands are dusty, their shoulders relaxed, their faces lit from below by lantern glows so their features look sculpted too, temporary statues made of breath and patience. You watch a chisel meet stone. Tap, tap, tap. Not forceful, precise. Each strike is small enough to seem almost pointless, until you notice the result. A line reappearing, a curve sharpening, a groove returning from blur to meaning. A brush dips into water and sweeps across a carved channel, washing away dust so the pattern shows cleanly again. Under the dampness, details emerge. A curl that becomes hair, a ridge that becomes cloth, a shallow hollow that becomes a shadow under a lotus petal. The work doesn't create drama. It creates clarity. You drift closer to one block and recognize the figure before your brain supplies the label. An apsara, a celestial dancer, carved with a softness that feels unfair for something so hard. Her arms curve in measured grace. Her fingers extend as if holding air. Her headdress rises in layered waves. Under lantern light, her carving casts its own shadow, and the shadow makes her look as if she's moving, barely, quietly, like the night itself has learned choreography. Stone dust settles on your lips when you exhale, tasting faintly chalky. You lick it away and feel ridiculous, like you're sampling history the way you sampled palm sugar. It makes you think of the moat's still reflection, the rice fields' mirror squares, the lanterns wobbling in the storm and then steadying inside their jars. The Apsara's face holds the same lesson. Calm isn't the absence of weather, it's the posture you keep while weather happens. The artisans work on damage that is almost invisible until you learn to see it. A chipped edge, a softened border, a hairline crack that wants to travel. Their tools are small, narrow chisels, wooden mallets, tiny picks for clearing debris from grooves. They pause often, not because they're slow, but because they're listening with their eyes. You watch one artisan mix a paste, water and fine stone dust, into a color that matches the block. The paste is pressed into a gap, smoothed, then left to settle. It's so subtle you almost miss it. And yet it changes everything. The crack is held, the line is saved, the story stays readable a little longer. Your missing lantern charm tugs at your attention again. You imagine it out there in wet grass, threads darkened by rain, loops snagged on a rice shoot. The impulse is to rush, to scour the fields like speed equals certainty. But these hands keep showing you a different method. Slow down, look properly, repair what you can, and trust that careful attention finds more than panic ever will. You sit for a moment and let the tapping become your metronome. Tap. Pause. Brush. Tap. Wipe. Your breathing falls into that pace. Long inhale, longer exhale. Your eyelids flutter, but you stay gently present. The artisan clears a groove and the pattern sharpens, lotus petals repeating in a loop. You remember the rain rings in the patties, circles widening and fading. The same rain that blurs stone is also the rain that grows rice. Nothing here is purely kind or purely cruel. It's all relationship, time and water and hands responding. You stand again, dusting your palms even though you didn't carve anything, because being near careful work makes you want to be careful too. Your fingers brush your pocket out of habit. The absence still stings, but quieter now, less like failure, more like an unfinished seam that might still be mended. You leave the workshop under the trees, lanterns glowing at the corners like small guardians. Behind you, the tapping continues, steady, patient, almost musical, holding the temple's stories together one tiny adjustment at a time. And as you step back onto the damp path toward the fields, you carry the lesson in your muscles. You don't have to wrestle time. You can tend it, one careful touch at a time. You step away from the workshop and its patient tap tap tap, and the night feels wider, as if the trees inhale when the chisels stop. Leaves still drip from the monsoon's leftovers. The path under your feet is cool and slick, but it no longer feels like a test. Ahead, lantern light gathers in thicker clusters, warmer and more intentional, not just guiding a doorway or a dike, but pulling people together. You follow that glow back toward the rice fields, and the landscape rearranges itself into celebration. Not loud celebration, no fireworks, no frantic noise, no one trying to outshine the moon. It's a low, steady communal brightness. Lanterns hang from bamboo poles along the field edges. Smaller lanterns rest on little platforms above the water squares, their reflections doubling them so each flame becomes two, one in the air, one in the paddy's mirror. From a distance, the flooded fields look as if the sky has lowered itself onto the earth and decided to stay. Locals move through the glow in calm streams. Some carry bundles of paper lanterns, hands careful with damp skins. Others hold small trays of flowers and folded leaves. A few tighten cords and check knots, because even a festival runs on practical kindness. You walk among them with your shoulders lowered, letting their unhurried pace teach your body what safe feels like. A soft rhythm reaches you from deeper in the fields. Wood tones and light percussion that don't demand attention, just set a heartbeat for your steps. The air carries wet earth and cooking smoke. Every breath feels rinsed clean. You move slower without trying, as if the night is turning down the volume on your thoughts. You step onto a raised dike and see the lanterns spread wide across the paddies. Some sit on shallow trays that skim the surface, creating small islands of glow. Others hang just high enough that their reflections tremble when a breeze passes. The moon watches from above, pale and indifferent, while the water below repeats everything twice. Your chest tightens, not from sadness exactly, but from that tender pressure you get when something is too gentle to defend against. The temple silhouettes sit far off, dark and steady against the sky. The lanterns do what lanterns do, turn darkness into something livable. And inside your pocket, where the little lantern charm should be, there is still only absence. The empty space feels louder here, surrounded by so much light. You give yourself a private, sleepy eye roll. Of course, the one tiny lantern you wanted to carry has decided to play hide and seek in the wet grass. You keep walking anyway. Near a paddy where rice heads bow heavy with grain, hands sprinkle a pinch of rice onto the surface. An offering small enough to fit in fingertips, meaningful enough to slow your breath. The grains land, float for a heartbeat, then disappear. The gesture is simple, and that's the point. Gratitude doesn't need to be dramatic to be real. A narrow wooden footbridge crosses a deeper channel. Lanterns line it like quiet guardians, their light catching on wet boards. You step onto the bridge carefully and feel the wood flex beneath you. The water below moves slowly, carrying broken moonlight downstream. You look down and for a half second, your brain insists you see a tiny loop of thread caught on a reed. Your body freezes. Your breath pauses. You lean closer. It's only wet grass reflecting lantern glow. You exhale through your nose, half relief, half embarrassment. Your mind has turned the missing charm into a small ghost. It keeps appearing in false shapes, a curled leaf, a bead of water, a knot of vine. You don't scold yourself. You let the false sighting pass like a ripple, and you keep moving with softer eyes. Deeper into the festival, the lanterns become denser, and the fields start to look like a map of stars. Clusters like constellations, lines like milky rivers, pools of light that feel warm just to look at. People move slowly between them, careful on narrow dikes, silhouettes crossing reflections so it looks like they're walking through the sky twice. Your tiredness shifts into something sweeter, not just sleepiness, but that floating feeling right before you drift off, when the world stops asking you to perform. You pause near a shallow paddy where lotus leaves spread wide, their round surfaces holding raindrops like tiny mirrors. Among the leaves, small folded leaf cups drift, each carrying a protected ember. They move slowly, nudged by the faintest currents, and their reflections trail behind them like soft commas. Watching them, you understand why the charm matted so quickly. It isn't a souvenir. It's a portable version of this exact tenderness. Light held gently, meaning made small enough to carry. You picture the charm out there somewhere, damp and quiet, maybe snagged on a rice shoot, maybe resting in mud, maybe waiting in a place your attention hasn't properly visited. The longing rises, sharp for a moment, then eases as your breath lengthens again. The lantern reflections tremble once in a passing breeze, then steady. Wobble happens. Light can still hold. You stand on the dike with wet earth under your feet and a universe of lanterns below your knees. The charm is still missing, and the night is still moving, but the fields have turned into a warm constellation, and your mind, finally, stops trying to control every star. It simply wants to stay here a little longer, quiet and glowing, until the festival carries you onward. You keep drifting through the lantern-lit paddies as if the night has put you on slow conveyor belts of warmth. The festival doesn't shove you from one activity to the next. It simply unfolds, like a long, gentle exhale that happens to have lanterns and wet fields and people who know how to move without stomping on the magic. The rice dikes feel narrower at night, especially with water on both sides reflecting light like it's trying to confuse your depth perception for fun. You walk carefully, toes pointed forward, weight centered, because falling into a paddy would be an unforgettable way to become part of local folklore. You can already picture it. The exhausted visitor who tried to carry peace and instead carried mud. Cute. Humbling. Not recommended. The lanterns continue to float and hang and glow, and you begin to notice how your mind responds to them. Each flight seems to pull a thought forward, then soften it. You catch yourself thinking about your life back home, workload, obligations, the constant buzzing need to be on. Usually those thoughts arrive like sharp objects. Tonight they arrive like lotus petals, light, slow, drifting, and easy to set down. A small platform sits beside the field, wooden and slightly raised, holding shallow bowls of water with floating leaves. The bowls reflect lantern glow in tiny circles, like miniature versions of the paddies. People pass by and, with calm hands, place small folded leaf cups into the bowls, each cup holding a tiny flame or ember protected by wax or oil. The flames aren't dramatic. They're barely their lights that look like they're practicing being brave. You pause near one bowl and watch the flames tremble. You can't help thinking about your own bravery, which is mostly the boring kind. You wake up, you do what you have to do, you pretend it's fine, you go to bed exhausted, you repeat. That's not the bravery people clap for. It's the bravery that keeps you alive quietly. You reach into your pocket again out of habit, as if the charm might have reappeared because you asked nicely. Nothing. The empty fabric feels like a little insult. You almost laugh, softly, privately, because losing a tiny charm shouldn't feel this personal. And yet it does, because you are, in fact, a creature that builds meaning out of small things. You've been pretending you're above that, but the moonlit rice fields have been exposing you gently all night. As you walk, memories surface, not as urgent flashes, but as slow bubbles rising. A deadline you've been dreading. A conversation you've been replaying. A worry you've been feeding like a pet. The lanterns don't erase these things. They just change the way you hold them. Under this light, the worries look less like monsters and more like tired animals that need to lie down. You remember the monsoon corridor, lanterns protected in jars, warmth held behind wet glass. Your mind has its own jars, you realize. Some worries need a jar, contained, acknowledged, not allowed to spill across the whole night. Some thoughts need a mat, a boundary. Some anxieties need a palm frond roof, shelter. You don't have to fight them head-on in the storm. You can simply protect your flame until the weather passes. You stop near a patty where lotus leaves spread wider, some edges torn by rain, some perfect. Water beads sit on them like silver pearls, catching moonlight. You watch a bead roll slowly toward the leaf's edge, pause, then drop into the patty with a tiny plink. The sound is so small you almost miss it. But it lands in you like a lesson. Release doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be quiet, one drop at a time. You close your eyes for a moment, standing on the dike. You breathe in wet earth and smoke and that faint herbal ghost still clinging to your skin. You breathe out and imagine a worry leaving you like that water bead, rolling, pausing, then dropping off the edge. Not exploding. Not being conquered. Just letting go because it's time. Another worry surfaces. The feeling that if you stop worrying, something bad will happen. That your vigilance is a kind of protection. It's a common lie, told by tired brains everywhere. And the village night answers it without words. The fields survive storms without constant panic. Lanterns survive wobble with gentle adjustment. Stone survives time with careful tending. You can survive without clenched fists. You open your eyes and notice people moving through the lantern glow with faces softened by light. Their expressions aren't ecstatic. They're steady. Their calm feels earned, built from years of seasons and floods and harvest and repair. You feel yourself wanting that kind of steadiness, not as an aesthetic, but as a home inside your body. A leaf-folded cup drifts near the edge of a patty, its tiny flame wavering. The current nudges it toward a clump of rice shoots. It bumps gently, then stalls. A hand reaches in, nudges it free, and it continues drifting. The motion is small and precise. It reminds you of the artisans filling cracks in stone, of the farmers bundling stalks, of the tea poured on the porch. Everything here says, when something gets stuck, you don't shame it. You simply help it move again. You walk farther, and the lantern reflections begin to look like a second sky under your feet. The line between above and below softens. You feel like you're floating between worlds, temple shadows in the distance, rice fields glowing below, moon above, your own tired body in the middle. The missing charm becomes less urgent for a moment, because the larger charm, this entire night, has already settled into you. You don't need proof in your pocket. The proof is in your slowed breath, your softened shoulders, your willingness to stand still without guilt. Still, you don't abandon the search. You keep scanning gently, eyes moving over the dike edges and the wet grass. But you do it without the frantic heat. You do it the way a person looks for something when they trust life, calmly, steadily, with a soft belief that what's meant to be found often returns when you stop choking the air. You reach a quiet stretch where lanterns are fewer, and the moonlight does more of the work. The rice leaves glisten with rain beads. Fireflies blink along the canal edge. The world feels rinsed and tender. You breathe again, long and slow, and you let another worry drop off the edge of your mind like water off lotus leaf. Tonight, you're not fixing your whole life. You're simply practicing release. One small exhale at a time. One petal at a time. One gentle letting go that doesn't ask for applause. The lantern festival thins gradually, the way a tide thins when it decides to return to sea. People drift back toward homes. Lanterns are gathered, rehung, sheltered. The fields don't go dark all at once. The glow just becomes more spaced out, more private. The night keeps breathing, but slower now, like it's preparing to hand the world over to morning again. You find yourself walking back toward the village edge with a calm that feels almost suspicious. You're still missing the tiny lantern charm, and yes, your pocket still feels wrong, too empty, like a missing tooth you keep worrying with your tongue. But the urgency has softened. The longing is still there, but it's quieter, less clawed. It has become a small ache you can carry without limping. Ahead, the sky begins its slow shift toward dawn. It's not bright yet, not even warm. It's just changing. The deepest black in the east turns into a slightly lighter black, then into a bluish wash that looks like someone diluted ink with water. The air cools again. Moisture clings to everything. The rice fields hold faint reflections of the paling sky, and the world starts to feel like it's waking up in a soft, reluctant stretch. You follow a path that leads toward higher ground near the temple's line of trees. The silhouettes of Angkor's towers return in the distance, faint and steady, like they never stopped watching you. Their shapes, now against a lighter sky, look less like shadows and more like quiet promise. The temple doesn't demand that you understand it. It simply exists, and that consistency becomes oddly comforting. Near the edge of the fields, a small kettle is set on coals. The smoke rises in a thin, sleepy curl. A cup appears in your hands again, warm tea, mild and herbal, with a scent that matches the night's earlier porch comfort. The warmth spreads through your fingers, then up your arms, as if your body is being reminded it can be cared for without earning it. You stand with the cup and watch the horizon. Birds begin to call, not loud yet, but testing their voices. The frogs quiet down further, as if making room for a new shift. Somewhere in the palms, leaves rustle as wind moves gently through. The world feels like it's holding its breath before the first real light. Your mind, naturally, tries to do its usual thing. Plan what comes next, think of the trip home. Wonder how you'll carry this calm back into your regular life without it evaporating by lunchtime. You feel the start of that familiar tightening in your chest. And then you do something small and radical. You stop. You don't argue with the thoughts. You just don't follow them. You bring your attention back to the cup, warm ceramic, steam brushing your face. You bring it back to the damp earth under your feet. You bring it back to the smell of wet rice and faint smoke and herbs. You bring it back to the temple silhouette holding steady in the distance. The world doesn't ask you for the future right now. It's offering you dawn. The first true light arrives like a gentle spill. A soft gold touches the edges of clouds. The rice paddies catch it and brighten, turning their dark mirrors into pale sheets. The water reflects the sky's growing warmth, and suddenly the fields look like they're made of liquid dawn. The rice shoots stand crisp and green against that brightness, and dew beads sparkle like tiny glass. You feel a tenderness rise in your chest that has nothing to do with romance and everything to do with farewell. Because you know this is ending. Not dramatically, not with a goodbye speech, but with this simple reality that mornings happen and nights fade and visitors eventually leave. The locals nearby move quietly, preparing for the day, folding mats, stacking lantern frames, rinsing bowls. Their faces look calmer in daylight, less sculpted by lantern shadow, more human and ordinary. And that ordinariness is the point. This calm isn't a performance for nighttime beauty. It's part of how life works here, woven into mornings and chores and harvest and tea. You want to thank them in some grand way, but the atmosphere refuses grandness. It suggests something simpler: presence, gratitude, steady breath. You hold your cup a little closer and let your gaze soften. You make a small internal promise to remember this, not as a story you tell, but as a feeling you return to when your life starts speeding up again. A small breeze passes over the fields, and the rice tops sway in gentle waves, catching sunrise like brushed silk. The temple towers remain steady, their peaks now outlined more clearly. The world feels rinsed and new, even though it's ancient and repeating. You touch your pocket one more time. The charm is still missing. You exhale. You don't panic. You let the loss be part of the story. Sometimes you don't get to keep the tiny object. Sometimes you only get the lesson it represented. You take the last sip of tea, warm and grounding. You let it settle in your chest like a small ember. Then you look at the fields one more time, at the water mirrors, the dew sparkle, the distant stone peaks, and you let the goodbye form quietly in your body, not in words. Because this place has taught you that farewells don't need speeches. They need attention. They need one last long look. They need a breath deep enough to hold the whole night, then release it gently into morning. You linger at the field's edge as dawn keeps spreading, slow and certain, the way calm spreads when you finally stop arguing with it. The teacup warms your hands one last time, then empties, and your fingers stay curled around it as if ceramic can hold a sunrise. Lantern frames are being gathered nearby. A few damp paper lanterns still hang low, drying in the new light, their reflections fading as the patties brighten from black mirror to pale gold sheet. One lantern remains on a shallow tray at the water's edge, its small flame protected from the breeze, glowing like the final ember of last night's constellation. You step toward it along the dike, careful on the damp earth. Dew beads glitter on rice leaves. The air smells clean. Wet soil, green plants, faint smoke from coals that are almost done, and the soft herbal whisper still clinging to your skin. Birds begin their first calls, tentative at first, then steadier, as if they've been cleared to start the day. You crouch beside the tray. The flame looks paler in daylight, not weaker, just exposed, like a secret you don't need to hide anymore. It trembles once, then steadies, and you remember the monsoon corridor, lanterns and jars, warmth held behind wet glass. How wobble never meant the end, only the need for gentler hands. You lift the tray and carry it a few steps along the patty edge. Water ripples out in slow rings when you set it down again. The flame's reflection quivers, then returns, a second little sun in the field. You breathe in, long and slow, and let your shoulders drop. Returning light to water feels like finishing a sentence properly. For a moment, the whole field seems to hold its breath with you, then relax. Then your pocket shifts against your thigh, and the emptiness there nudges you again. The missing lantern charm. You rest your hand on the pocket anyway, an oddly tender touch to absence, then begin one last quiet loop along the dike, eyes soft, not hunting with panic, simply looking the way the stone carvers looked at cracks, patiently, precisely, without shame. The path glistens. Tiny ridges of mud have dried into delicate lines. Raindrops still cling to rice leaves, and when a breeze passes, a few fall like quiet punctuation into the water. You walk past a clump of grass bent over the canal edge and catch a familiar texture in your peripheral vision. Not a glow, not a glint, but a small woven shape that doesn't belong to leaf or soil. You stop. You crouch. There it is, half tucked into wet grass, loop caught on a rice shoot, threads darkened by rain and dawn, tiny bead lightly coated in mud. It looks smaller than you remember and somehow more important, like a dream object you almost woke up without. Your breath catches, then releases. You slip it free with careful fingers. It's cool and damp in your palm. You rinse it in the canal, letting water run over woven thread and bead, washing mud away in soft streams. The weave reappears. The tiny shadows inside it return. You hold it up to the sunrise and watch it catch the new light, gentle, ordinary, real. For a moment you consider tucking it back into your pocket, taking it home as proof, as insurance against forgetting. But you look out at the fields, water mirrors bright, rice rows neat and living, temple peaks steady in the distance, and you realize the calm you want isn't trapped in thread. It's already in your body, in slower breath, in softer shoulders, in the way you no longer treat every wobble like catastrophe. So you choose a gentler ending. You walk back to the tray where the last lantern still glows. You tie the charm's loop to the lantern's cord with a careful knot, the way you watched hands tighten mats in the storm. The charm hangs there beneath the paper skin, a tiny echo of the larger light. In the faint breeze, it sways once, then settles, as if agreeing to stay. The flame is nearly done, not because it failed, but because time is moving on. Around you, the village continues waking, a pot rinsed, a bundle lifted, a footstep on wet earth. Somewhere a buffalo exhales, still unbothered, still teaching. The river keeps pulling water forward. The Apsara faces keep their calm. The Naga curves keep reminding you that life moves, and you can move with it. You take one last long look at the lantern, at the charm, at the water's double sky. Then you turn toward the path that leads out, back to roads, back to schedules, back to a world that loves urgency a little too much. You walk slowly anyway. Each step feels like a quiet goodbye, to lantern light that doesn't demand anything, to patient hands that showed you how to shelter warmth, to dawn that arrived without asking you to deserve it. You don't clutch at the feeling. You let it travel with you like a steady current under the surface. And as the fields fall behind you, you carry the simplest lesson this place offered you, the one you can't misplace. Light survives when you treat it gently, especially the light inside you. You let the last bits of brightness blur at the edges, the way a tired mind softens when it finally believes it is safe. The rice fields keep shining for a while, then their reflections become simpler, flatter, more ordinary, as if the water is quietly closing its eyes too. Somewhere behind you, a lantern's ember finishes its work, and you don't rush to watch it. You already know how it ends, and it ends kindly. Your breathing stays slow. Inhale. Exhale. The scent of wet earth becomes a background blanket. The memory of lemongrass stays faint on your skin, a soft reminder that care can be simple. The buffalo's calm, the moat's silver stillness, the river's steady pull, the fireflies blinking their gentle yes. All of it settles into you like light sinking into water. If a worry tries to tap your shoulder, you let it pass by, uninvited but not fought, like rain sliding off lotus leaf. You don't need to solve anything tonight. You don't need to prove anything tonight. You only need to rest, and rest is allowed, even if your brain complains about productivity like an office manager. Now the scene grows quieter. Lantern glows dim in your imagination. Temple peaks become softer silhouettes. The patties become dark mirrors again, then simply dark water, then simply water, and the details fade the way distant music fades when you close a door. You feel your eyelids heavier. You feel your jaw unclench. You feel your shoulders drop, millimeter by millimeter, until they stop trying to hold the whole world up. You take one more deep, slow breath, and you let the night carry you the rest of the way, like a boat that knows the river by heart, gliding without effort, gliding without fear, until sleep arrives. End of story. Sweet dreams.